Welcome to Game Over Montreal. It's a stronger start to the season than I think anybody could have expected. There's lots to talk about tonight. We've got another great performance by Jake Allen. The special teams, hey, not horrendous tonight. Maybe partially because of Jake Allen, but we'll talk about that as well. And some heroic performances in this game, especially by that third line. We're also going to maybe talk about the new NHL Edge statistics things that they're bringing in. We'll see how long we go on the topics of the game. But first, let me welcome in my guest, Nicolas Cloutier. Nick, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Andrew. How about
I'm
you?
glad. I'm doing good. I think I have less hair than the last time you saw me.
Oh well, so something you cannot stop with age. And what did you say? Like you need some gray hair sometimes.
I got it in the
Okay.
chest. Here it was just it retreated before it could turn gray. So I was like, yeah,
Did
I'm
it
just gonna give
did
it
it
up.
go away like in a sudden like period, or
No, it was a
like you woke
long.
up, you looked in the mirror and you were horrified, or
No, you know what happened? This is obviously we'll get into the game, I promise, everyone.
sure.
But what happened was years and years ago, uh, one of my oldest son, Dylan, was out and he wanted to like play in the snow for the first time. Like, and
Okay.
he was like 1 year old or whatever. And he was like running around and I was kind of chasing after him. And my wife had taken a video and she was up at the top of the stairs and we were like below the landing in the front area, like on the sidewalk. And I saw the video afterwards and I was like, it's pretty thin up top. It's a lot thinner than I would have admitted if I didn't see it. So tried the whole like Rogaine thing and it
Yeah.
took, but that's like $80 a month. And I was like, you
Oh
know what?
yeah, this stuff is expensive. You gotta
Yeah.
ask Theodore for the right stuff.
The
He's got
Propecia.
all
Yeah.
the right stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or nothing a trip to Turkey can fix either.
That's true. I asked my doctor about Propecia, but like the number one and two side
Mhm.
effects was like your libido crashes and then you gain weight. And I
Yeah,
was like, listen, I don't
exactly.
need either of those. I don't need it, so I'll just take the
Yeah.
hair off.
Yeah.
All right, let's get
That's
into this
fair.
game. I think let's start on probably the biggest positive from this. I feel like this is kind of a complicated way to approach it, but in this game, I was kind of shocked when I saw the breakdown that high danger scoring chances at 5-on-5 were actually 12-4 Habs.
For the
And
abs, yep.
yeah, for the Habs. And I kind of thought during the game, like the Sabres are getting lots of shots, but it felt like when they were getting decent shots on Allen from the
Hmm.
middle, he had clear vision. And a lot of the shots were just trying from the outside, trying to get rebounds and things like that. And the Canadians, I think the D structure is still not great, but the effort level is like A plus plus.
Well, Andrew, it's the first time I'm hearing this stat. Like you're telling me of this stat, but I cannot say I'm surprised because I was looking at the shot total during the game. Obviously, it was heavily favoring the Sabres, but what I could see was that the Abs were not getting a lot of sustained offensive zone time, but they were not giving up a lot of dangerous shots either. So they were playing good defense, I guess, like bend but don't break defense, but they were not exactly transitioning the puck the other way too. So I
Yeah.
wouldn't say it's a good thing, but at least like you're stopping the energy. So you're doing something right. And obviously, all we know is that the D zone structure was fairly simple when Marty took over. It was like pretty much like man to man, but as the season progressed last year and now this year at training camp with all this experience with the new guys, I mean, I think he kind of started to implement some like more elaborate concepts on defense, and I think we're switching to a zone concept maybe progressively, and that might be what we're seeing. And even on the PK, I read Bazu's piece recently. They switched to like a diamond setup on the PK, so you're seeing small adjustments. And also like these demons are a bit more experienced than last year. I mean, last year they were breaking in with like four rookies, so yeah,
Five
it's
at
it's
times.
small. No, five rookies. No, you're right, Andrew. So yeah, I think it's starting to pay dividends. All of this combined.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. Like there are still limitations, and I think we mentioned it before we went live. You and I were just kind of chatting a little bit.
Yep.
No Kirby Doc, no Caden Gooley, This is a team. I think you look at the Buffalo Sabres and you see a team a couple years at least down the road further in their rebuild than the Canadiens are. So you've got
Yep,
those two huge hits out of the top of your lineup. Like Gooley may be outside of Matheson the best defenseman on the team already. Doc is
exactly.
arguably the number one center depending on who you're talking to, and still to be able to stick to the program enough in this game to limit the quality of a very strong offensive team, frankly,
Very.
as much as the Sabres have kind of started the season a little
Well, they
bit
were what,
disjointed.
like first or second in the AHL for goals for the Sabres were
Yeah,
last
they were
year.
nuts last year. They were an
Yeah,
absolute wagon. They
exactly.
just couldn't defend.
Yeah.
But I'm really impressed. David Savard, that shift on the PK
Hmm.
there at the end,
Where he
that
lost his blade.
exemplifies. Oh
Yeah.
my God. And the two shots that he took, they both look like they hurt. I know he
Oh
didn't come
God.
back. I hope it's
Yeah.
just the skate blade that was being finicky and he isn't hurt.
Well, it's one of those situations where I guess it stings and it hurts in the moment, but I mean, you put some ice on it and you're good to go for next game. And I mean, David Savard, he's one tough son of a gun. So I'm not too worried about him. But yeah, if we're talking about the veterans like Tanner Pearson, man, like you're talking about David, but like some of the older guys on the Montreal lineup are doing things I did not expect them to do this year. And you could even talk about Gallagher. Like it's so
Mm-hmm.
many haters in the preseason were saying, "Oh, this guy's a wash. This guy's finished," and for good reason at some point. But
Yep.
what I was telling them is, I mean, you cannot evaluate Brendan Gallagher on preseason play because what can this guy do in preseason? Everything he does is for high stakes hockey. He's a grinder. He goes to the tough areas. The guy cannot play the style of hockey well during meaningless hockey. That's just not his DNA. So I was just telling guys, yeah, let's just wait like 4 or 5 games, and we're gonna see really what shape he's in. But we're really seeing some promising results, and in a limited role nonetheless, but still promising results. And yeah, Tanner Pearson. I mean, before he was even setting up that Gallagher goal, I was tweeting that he's having a hell of a game. He had what like 4 shots before setting up Gallagher. I mean, this is a guy, and Andrew, I want your take on that. Let's say the Canadians, surprisingly, they're in a playoff spot at the deadline. Is this a guy you keep because he has chemistry with Newhook? He has chemistry with Gallagher. I mean, it's something to think about. Obviously, if you're fetching a first round pick, I mean that might not be up for debate, but still.
Yeah, yeah. I think both him and Monahan, right? It really does depend on the potential return. I think right now Kent Hughes is probably salivating at both those guys
Oh
looking
yeah,
so strong, right?
yeah,
Like that's one of the positives of this year. I don't think anybody expects this record to hold, right? Even the most rose-colored
yeah.
glasses Canadians
I
fans, they
don't I
know.
don't think so, but I've seen crazier things. And as we're talking, Andrew, the Sabres are last in the division, and it does not make any sense. And sometimes
No,
hockey does not make sense to you. So
it's very true. But like, if they're in a position to sell, they're in a good position where they can get some capital this year that they didn't
yeah,
have last year, right? Like I think that's why last year felt like such a grind. Aside from the injuries, it was just
absolutely, yeah,
like there's nothing to look forward to until the
yeah.
draft, and then the draft, as
Because
much as
Slav was injured as well, and like so
exactly,
many key players were getting injured. The players, the young players that you wanted to see progress, and they were not even in the lineup. So yeah, like you said.
yeah, and then you have the draft that I know people have warmed up to Reinbacher now, but the vibe was not great
Hmm.
at the
Yeah,
draft, right? People were not very
yeah. Tell me
happy.
about it. Tell me
Yeah,
about it.
it was a tough one. We'll see if
Yeah.
it pays off for them. But I think he's going to be a really good player, but
Well,
still a
well,
tough one.
actually, and Andrew, like a couple of months before the draft, I was like one of the first journalists I think that reported a strong interest from the Canadians in David Reinbacher, and I was getting like hate mail over that. Like people were not happy just at the possibility of drafting Reinbacher, and there was this guy, this Quebecer that was playing with him in the Swiss league. That did not want to give me an interview before the Avs drafted Reinbacher. The Avs draft Reinbacher. He sees the comments online. First thing he does, he calls me. He's like, "No, I'm just tired of the bullshit I'm reading online. Like we're talking. Like I've got to defend this guy." And yeah,
I mean, he seems like a really good player, right? I think he's
oh, he is.
still out hurt, but there's a long you can see it in even like rookie camp. There's a huge amount of
Yeah,
potential in him. But we were talking about the veterans, so let's talk about the veterans a little bit. Brendan Gallagher, you mentioned a lot of people saying he was washed. I mean, watching him in that the game against the Leafs, beyond
hmm
just preseason, the way he was skating, I was like, man, it just
yeah,
looks like he is struggling to keep up with NHL speed. But he's got his feet under him, and I'm not going to say he's Brendan Gallagher of 30 goal seasons,
yeah.
but he is contributing in a lot of ways. And I know our good buddy Ian Boisvert, I don't know if he's in the chat tonight, but he was saying on Twitter that the Monahan Pearson Gallagher line being their best line isn't a good thing. But listen, on any
Yeah,
given night, somebody's got to step up, and that line
exactly.
was absolutely terrorizing the Sabres. Like, I don't know if it was just
Yeah.
the physicality they were playing with combined with like Pearson or not Pearson, Monahan's smarts, because he's such an intelligent player. It
Oh,
blows my mind how
Monahan.
smart he is.
I mean, it's getting pretty obvious that if you take Caulfield and Suzuki out of the equation, he's by far the best apps forward. And Dak
Yeah.
being injured, of course. I mean, this is a very, very, very smart player that is not like he doesn't lose skill. Like every skill he has is pretty much like I would say average, but what separates him from the pack is just the way he processes the game. Because I mean, he's not that good of a skater. His shot is good, but it's not as good as it was during his prime. But the way he makes it work is all around smarts in his complete game. Just a great player and just a great ad by Kent Hughes, who even added like a first round pick with like this this flurry of conditions.
Yeah, that trade continues to age extremely well.
Yeah.
Even when Monahan wasn't able to be traded last year, it was still a
Yeah.
great trade, and the fact that they're probably going to get another first round pick out of that is just
Yeah.
gravy. Like it's such a good move. The amount of moves that Hughes and Co have made that are just like chess moves almost
Oh yeah.
is really really impressive. We mentioned Pearson again, another goal for Pearson. That tic tac toe
hmm
goal on the power play. Uh, I know we keep on talking about him, but the fact is, coming into the season, nobody was sure if he could use that wrist to shoot, and he's got
Yeah,
an absolute
exactly.
rocket.
Well, clearly, Kent Hughes before adding him had done his homework, and I think the Canucks did not trade him because they thought he couldn't play anymore. It's just that so many things happened, and it was really just time for a split there because I mean, what happened last year was nasty. Like for Quinn Hughes to come out and say that uh, it's not like something's wrong with his rehab. I mean, you couldn't imagine things like if he says that like in front of the media, like what do you think he's saying like behind closed doors? Like this
Yeah,
was just a nasty situation. So I can understand why he needed a fresh start, and it's really been a great move by Hughes. Great use of the intel he had. I keep saying use what he has a leg up on Bergevin because I think like all the cap the manipulation of the cap and the little edge and the little things in the CBA he finds and the conditions. I think he's just like Bergevin was a great GM as far as trades, but he's just like that much more creative when it comes to it.
yeah, you're right. There does seem to be a lot of creativity, a lot of
Yep.
attention to detail that kind of got lost in the weeds with Bergevin. Like
Yep.
everyone thinks that I like seethingly hate Marc Bergevin, but
Yeah.
I've always said from like almost the very beginning that he was a 50-50 GM. And a
Yeah.
50-50 GM can get you into like the playoffs, but you're not going to win a Stanley Cup most likely, unless somehow Peter Chiarelli takes over the Boston Bruins and inherits Patrice Bergeron and Zdeno Chara and
And Jeff
all
Gorton's
these
word,
guys.
pretty much.
Pretty much like that.
Yeah.
The couple months that Jeff Gorton was the interim GM
Oh
of the
my
Boston Bruins is
god.
legendary.
And people don't know that because like officially like Shirley took over just after that, but by the time Jeff Gorton had done this draft, like they already knew Shirley was coming over as GM. He already had been announced as the future GM of the Boston Bruins. So everybody attributes that work to Peter Shirley, but he did none of it. So that's what's crazy to me is how like Gorton built this powerhouse in a couple of months at the helm of the Boston Bruins, and he got replaced right after that.
Just not very thankful, I
Yeah.
guess. I
Yeah, of
mean, obviously a little bit less of a successful run with the Rangers, but still a lot of big
course.
pieces brought in there, and they haven't won yet, but they're a consistent playoff threat. All right, so I want to remind everybody that if you're here and you have questions that are off topic, we're doing a new thing this year. Obviously, feel free to contribute to what we're talking about, staying on topic, but off topic stuff at the end of the show. We're going to have a 5 to 10 minute segment where you can ask Nick and I some questions and we'll answer them quickly. But save those off topic questions for the end, please. Stick around. We promise we'll get to you, at least unless there's like 150 questions, and then I'm not going to stay here until midnight. But yeah, that's going to be really fun. Make sure you like the stream, subscribe to SDPN, and, give us a share on your favorite social media of choice, because the more people are here, the more fun we have. All right, we talked about the veterans. Obviously, Gallagher and Savard were like the heroes of the game, I think, with those several shifts, and Pearson as well, Monahan.
Yep.
We're gonna go through all the veterans again, but the young guys, I thought there were some great moments in there from
Hmm.
Juraj Slafkovsky. He was the
Oh
one who
yeah,
stood
there
out
was.
big to me again tonight. There's like some level of precision I think that's still missing from his game,
Oh yeah,
but you
yeah,
can tell that now
definitely.
he's making the right decisions, which last year I don't think was always the case.
Well, I think you're bang on, Andrew, because if I read my notes, it's pretty much Uriah Slavkovsky being very involved, but there's still like some finishing touches that are missing. What I noticed with Uri is I feel like he's buzzing during the game, and particularly at the beginning of the game, he was buzzing. He was getting his puck touches near the crease, and it was good going from him. But I still feel like he misses that go-to scoring move. You know, like that go-to scoring move every scorer has. Like for Ovi, it's that one timer at the top of the circle. For Suzuki, it's that on the right side, that little curl and wrister or whatever. Like every scorer has that one move that they go back to and they often score with, and I feel like Juraj Slavkovsky doesn't quite have that yet. Like he has the tools, and sometimes you see them in spades, you see them in flashes during the game, but he doesn't quite know yet how to put it all together. You know?
Yeah. And I think that's because we can see the progress. I think this year people are going, like, fans are going to be a little bit more patient with him because you can see the additions to his game, right? Way more physical this season. He's like confident in
Yeah,
his body to knock
of
guys
course.
over. There were several times tonight where he just like pushed guys off the puck that he didn't even seem like he had the footing to do so. He's just really strong. So maybe it's one of those situations where we know he's working with skills coaches all the time. We know he's working really hard to
Yep.
refine his game and working with Marty St. Louis. And he's doing all the little things now. And likely it'll be like once he's mastered that, then he'll figure out what he needs to do to score goals consistently at this level. And I'm okay with that. I'd like to see him get a little bit more opportunity on the power play, specifically
Yep.
over Josh Anderson, who I really love Anderson's game at even strength this year. I think he's been great.
Yeah.
But the power play, I don't. The brain doesn't brain
The guy
on the
doesn't
power
even
play
hit
for
the
him.
net on the power play. I mean,
No,
for
I
God's
mean,
sake, like.
it's
eh, eh,
the way I would say it when Anderson's out there on power play one, and like the struggles of power play one are not all on him, but to me
No.
it seems more like it's 4.5 guys instead of five. Like he doesn't get
Yeah.
really puck touches, he doesn't contribute, he doesn't handle the puck very well, he doesn't pass very well. So it's really like if the puck gets to him and he has a shooting position, it's almost by chance. He doesn't have
Hmm.
a great one timer. He's more of an off the rush guy. I understand what they're trying to do because he's worked so hard in other aspects of his game to become a better player. I'm guessing that the coaching staff is giving him the chance to figure
Yeah.
this out and become a power play scorer, but I don't think
That,
it's
that's
working.
that, that's just I just that I think that's St. Louis' approach, because I think St. Louis starts with the mentality, and that's what separates St. Louis from other coaches. Like we fit those players in a mold and we scout them, and we often like go straight to the conclusion. Okay, you're this player, but St. Louis takes Anderson and he's like, okay, no, you can learn to play with poise. You can learn to do these puck possession plays, and you try to do the same thing with Gallagher's. I don't know if it's gonna work or not. I mean, he's pretty optimistic, thinking that he can make like Josh Anderson into this playmaker, if you're asking me. But at least he's trying, and he doesn't start with a preconceived notion about a player. So I think it's a refreshing approach. I don't know if it's going to work, because The only way I see Josh Anderson helping on the power play right now is when you have to win these 50-50 battles, like
Hmm.
along the boards to keep the puck in the O zone. Because otherwise, I don't see how he's useful. I mean, you saw it tonight. Like as soon as that first wave stepped up the ice and Slafkovsky and Newick and the other guys came in, I mean, they scored pretty much like moments later. So I like what that wave did for the Avs. And as far as Slafkovsky, one thing I would say is I talked to one of his trainers in Europe during the summer, and I wrote a piece on that. I know he's ready to look at every possible method or solution to really be a better player. And what he did was some pretty advanced scientific stuff to upgrade his pulmonary capacity like by 20%. It was like really like cutting edge stuff. So for him to have the openness to go through that, I mean, tells me a lot. He's not just gonna like ride his bike all summer long, hoping to be a better player. I mean, he's gonna turn over every stone.
And that you gotta love that if you're the Montreal
Yeah,
Canadiens, right? That's part of why
absolutely.
they drafted the guy.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
yeah, there
They,
was a
they
there was
you
a
gotta draft a character. If you're Montreal, you gotta draft also a human being in such a tough market. That's why they didn't draft Shane Wright, because he was getting so defensive during the interview, and they were like, okay, you're defensive with us during the interview. I mean, there's these journalists, they're just gonna kill you out there. They're gonna rip you apart. So you gotta make a decision based on the market as well, not only on the talent of the player. Unfortunately, that's an extra factor the Abs have to consider.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, the Habs more than any other team really. Like even in
Yeah,
Toronto, I feel like they're softer on their players than the media can be here and the fans can
I
be here.
agree.
There's just,
Totally
it's
agree.
such a microscope that you have to play under
Yep.
here. It absolutely matters. Thomas here in the chat likes my shirt. Thank you, Thomas. This is actually made by my wife's friend, Mary France, who used to have her
Oh,
own clothing
really?
company. Yeah, yeah. So it's actually little paper airplanes. I don't know if you can see on the screen, but yeah, I love this shirt. It almost got ruined. A couple of years ago, my wife handed me a bottle of Buffalo like Red Hot or Frank's Red Hot, and I went to shake it up, but I didn't know the lid wasn't all the way on. Fucking everywhere, like all over. It took like three washes
Jesus
to get it
Christ.
out. But yeah, it
Was it
was
during one of those segments you're doing during the year?
no,
Were
no,
you okay?
no. It was just having some pizza. I wanted some buffalo sauce on there. Uh,
Okay.
Jake Allen, we kind of mentioned him a little bit, but I know we're talking more about the young guys, but I gotta throw Jake Allen up there as just
Sure.
the way he played against Toronto was not great, right? And he had a rough preseason. Uh, to come in the last two games and essentially stand on his head. I don't think he's had to make like the craziest saves. It's not Halak in the playoffs, right? But for his age, for the goaltender that he is, man, I couldn't be more impressed. And he's been doing this kind of solid guy that doesn't let in the bad goals for a couple seasons now. He'll have the odd game where he lets in a few squeakers, but I think he's been exactly what he was sold to the Canadians as. He's a guy who can help the kids have some confidence, and I thought he was great tonight.
Absolutely agree. I mean, we thought at the beginning of the season that Montembeault was going to run away with the starting job, and all the talk was like, "Oh no, we got to get Montembeault more games this year. Got to give him 60 games. Got to make him the clear-cut starter and all of that." And clearly, everyone was surprised when St. Louis actually decided to go with Allen for the first game against Toronto, because I mean, Allen didn't have a great camp, like you alluded to. So it was an interesting development, and also it did make St. Louis look particularly good when Allen allowed those goals against Toronto. But I mean, he came back with him. He showed confidence in him. Like let's be honest, they're gonna keep Allen because he's the veteran. He's loved in the room, and you cannot move this contract. So hey, if you gotta live with him, I mean, you at least have to show some confidence in him, so you can work with him, right?
100%. Back on the young kids. Another, I mean, I guess he's not really a kid, but he was a rookie last year. Jonathan Kovacevic.
Yeah.
I liked him a lot last year. I think he's taken a big step this year. He's being asked to do more. up on the second pair. And you see his old double Dion hit there. I think it was in the
Yeah.
second period. He took out two guys. That was awesome. I think the hip check on Okposo. Nobody throws hip checks anymore. I love hip
Nope.
checks. They need to bring them
Subban
back.
Subban used to. Subban
Yeah.
used to, and the timing was just impeccable as well. Orlov does it
Yes.
sometimes. Romanov used to be this kind of player. One of your favorites, Yemelin, also used to do
Yep.
hip checks from time to time.
When I was growing up, one of my favorites was Rob Blake. You just see that big ass screaming across the ice, and
Yeah,
somebody was gonna get hurt.
was unfortunately too young for that window.
Oh no, aging myself here.
Yeah, no, I'm
Rob
sorry.
Blake, when he was with the
I
Colorado
know he was
Avalanche, was one of
great.
my
Like I saw
favorites.
some tape, obviously, and some games, but like I can't say like I grew up watching Rob Blake.
That's okay. I can age myself. That's all right. Uh, Claire is saying that you look like a mix of Deneau and Mike Hoffman.
Oh yeah, I get that a lot. Yeah.
I see it. I see it. Less Hoffman, more Deneau. Just you gotta get you like some pizza.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not as good defensively though. That's
I mean, who among
I
us
don't back
is?
check in rec leagues, so I'm not
No.
exactly to know. No. I mean, I pay like what $300 for the season. I pay to score, man. I'm not your back check. Like, what are you talking about?
Back checking in rec league. Who needs to do that? Who needs to do
Yeah,
that?
exactly. I'm here to have fun. So
Oh my god. Uh, it the power play. Let's chat a little bit about that because
hmm
obviously the first line is not getting it done there. I think comparing to how the second wave that barely got iced tonight at all made things happen in such a short time. Do you think it's
yeah.
a case of just like overthinking outside of Anderson not necessarily being a fit? But it seemed to me like that second wave just came out there, tried to move the puck quickly to get guys moving and take a shot. And Suzuki is always looking for Caulfield. Monahan is kind of also looking for Caulfield. Matheson the same, and they're
Yeah.
trying to wait for that perfect shot. And tonight, Caulfield I thought was fighting the puck a little bit.
I feel like Andrew, it's been a curse that has been going on for many years. As soon as they have that power play guy, that power play specialist, let's say in quotation marks, they're trying to use him. I mean, we saw it in some stretches with Weber when Weber was injured at some point. The Avs power play was better with Petrie, and that doesn't make any sense. And it's not even on Weber, and like it's not even on Caulfield right now. It's about how they use the guy and how they make it so predictable. And again, I can't even blame the coach, okay, because we're going to say it's Alex Burrow's fault. Okay, but was it Kirk Muller's fault? Was it Gerard Garand's fault when he was running power play? I mean, we've seen these PP coaches come and go with nothing to show for it. So simply like sacking Burrows wouldn't do anything if you ask me, because we've been over this. Uh, I don't know, but like it seems like Suzuki is always trying to find Caulfield, but he makes it so plainly obvious sometimes. And when he does make that pass across the box to Caulfield, it's often when Caulfield doesn't even have an angle to shoot.
Yeah.
So they don't give him the proper looks. Is it a function of like not having enough threats out there and Caulfield being the only threat? I don't know. Because I mean, if you look at Washington over the years, I mean, there was Carlson, there was Ovi. I mean, there were dual threats and there were other threats scattered around the ice, so you had to respect those. I think over the years of Montreal, the problem is that they have one threat on the power play, on the first wave of the power play, and it's always the same threat, so they can't seem to make it work.
Yeah, it's weird that this has kind of been the thing for forever, right? Like
Yeah,
it kind of worked a little bit when Andrei Markov was quarterbacking everything because the
hmm
game has changed since then as well. But
yeah.
Markov to Weber, Markov to Subban, Markov to Strike, Markov to Sore, like that option worked for a time.
And Markov sliding backdoor beautifully
Yes,
was
those
a
were
thing
always
of
fun
art.
too.
Yeah,
But I think despite the fact that those worked, they were always, for the most part anyway, one weapon power plays. Like we looked at Max
yeah,
Pacioretty when he was here, score 37 goals in a season and like barely score on the power play. It's all even
yeah,
strength. It's not because
exactly.
he's allergic to scoring on the power play. He went to Vegas and scored on the power play.
hmm
It's like this team, for whatever reason, focuses solely on their best option and fails to make a setup that works for more than one option. And I don't know who's to blame there. I don't know if the players just don't get enough input from the coaches. I know that until this season, Marty St. Louis was saying they didn't practice the power play much, which I know a lot of people got upset about. I totally understand where he's coming from in a rebuild, that he's trying to get
Yep.
the little stuff to go right. And frankly, I got to give it to Marty St. Louis. The comparison to last year, like the Canadians have now controlled high danger scoring chances and expected goals
And
at 5-on-5,
expected goals.
4 out of 5 games.
Yep.
That did not
You
happen at
didn't
any
see
point
that.
last
No,
year.
you didn't see that
Like,
last year. I mean,
totally
you
different.
look at the goals allowed. It was like blunders on the special teams. And you know what? Blunders on the special teams, it's something like you can fix with schemes. It's like so fixable. But if you suck 5-on-5, like there's not even point in playing the game, you know? You're not gonna go far not playing good hockey 5-on-5. That's where most of the game is played. That's where the game is more representative of where you are as a team. So no, I gotta go with you on this. Like, there's a big, massive improvement from last year. That's why people call me crazy when I simply entertain the idea that they just might surprise. It might just be a little bit in the picture, like creeping in the picture as we approach like the trade deadline. But I mean, I've seen crazier things, and I remember that team. I think it was in 2018, 2019, the first year they had Domi. Domi scored like 72 points or so.
Yeah.
And that year they had no business like being in the playoffs, but I think they ended up like 1 point or 2 points away from the playoffs. I mean, I think it was like a Blue Jackets game that like uh, eliminated them from the contention, but like they were this close to making the playoffs. And Bergevin himself, before the beginning of that year, said they were entering a reset, so there was no expectation. So I'm just saying, in hockey, like we all make these predictions at the beginning of the year, we send our standings, and you can pretty much rip them apart at the end of every year. So it's one of the most unpredictable game. That's why we love this game. But chance is such a factor, variance is such a factor. So we never know. And we talked about Monahan, we talked about Pearson. I mean, you have to ice a lineup at some point, so they're not going to trade both of them. So they're going to have to choose which one they trade also.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on how many guys are ready from the American Hockey League. Well, and we'll talk about that maybe next here, but before
Yeah,
we do, uh,
sure.
let's tell everyone, remember, like the stream, subscribe to SDPN, stick around for our question segment at the end, our presser. There was actually, before I get into it, Matthew Barrett, sorry, says, which was the team that was hopeless 5-on-5 and scored largely on the power play? I don't know if he's talking about the Canadians, but the Canadians team that I think of when you say that
Under
was like,
Carbonell?
yeah, I was thinking Carbonell as well,
Oh yeah,
where
yeah.
they were
Good
just hopeless
times.
at 5-on-5, but like Kovalev was power play go burr, he was just gonna find a way to make it happen. It's funny, if you go back and look at that team from like 2008, that first round against the Bruins, that team was fun as hell. Like, and
Oh
a lot of
yeah.
those players didn't end
Oh
up
yeah.
meeting their ceiling, like the younger players. But do you remember when like the two Kostitsins first broke in and like Sergey came in and he looked like a friggin' superstar,
I mean,
just couldn't back check?
those years were like the first years of me watching hockey back when I was young. Like so, it's some of the years I cherish the most. I mean, that was the year when Kovalev lost his helmet and scored, I believe.
That's right.
And I think that year, unfortunately, they lost in the second round against the Flares because of you know who, Marty Baron, who was
Yeah.
a freaking wall, and
No, it
it
was
came out of
Michael Leighton.
nowhere. No, no, Michael Leighton was when the Alac run,
What?
so it was
Oh,
later
you're
with Jacques
right.
Martin. But this run was under Carbonneau when their power play was incredible. Kovalev finished the season with like 84 points. It was like Kovalev was the only 80 point, like Carey Price in his whole career played with one 80-point player, and it was Alex
His
Kovalev
rookie
that
year.
year. Such a freaking shame. I know, doesn't make any sense, but and the power play was clicking, but when it came to playoffs, it all vanished away. Like they couldn't do anything on the power play. And these players, I remember, and I remember the game 7 against the Bruins in the first round. I think Kostitsyn scored the first goal. Latendresse scored as well. That was such a fun team, like you said. They had so many scores scattered across the lineup. They had Strike even playing it forward at sometimes, and oh yeah, just a fun team all around.
Yeah, I mean, even even in like the 2011 run or 2010 run, sorry,
Yeah,
when
with
Kostitsyn
the
scored that
line.
hat trick in the game that they lost, it was like game 2 against Washington. One of the goals that Kostitsyn scored was the hardest I've ever heard a puck hit a bar. Like, if go back and watch game 2 against the Washington Capitals first round, and I think it's Kostitsyn's second goal of the game. He scored a hat trick. The third one I think was a Spacek shot that went off his butt, which, great hat trick in the playoffs. You'll take it, I'm sure. But just absolutely incredible shot. All right, let's talk a little bit about some of the guys in Laval, because I think
Yeah,
you cover the Laval Rockets, and
yeah,
it's an interesting thing for the Canadians about the trade deadline as well. And then we'll
absolutely.
maybe chat a little bit about NHL Edge before we get into the questions. But talking about Monahan and Pearson, obviously Monahan at C, there's nobody there, right? There's
Hmm.
nobody easy to pick up and replace. But for
Yep.
Pearson, I just get this feeling that we're gonna get to game 40 around there. Joshua Waugh is gonna get called up, and he's never gonna see the AHL again. That
Yep.
kid just looks NHL ready to me.
You know what, Andrew? I agree with you, but I would not recall him just yet. Like you're right. You're right saying like he's gonna get recall. When he's gonna get recalled, he's not gonna be sent back. But
Yeah,
that time cannot be right now because I mean Joshua Watt, and I had a great conversation with Jean-François Hull uh, at the Place Bell like the other day, and he was just telling me, I mean, what is there to fix right now in Joshua's development? I mean, I'm giving the guy like 20 minutes a night right now. He's playing on the first wave of the power play. He's never going to see that much ice. He's never going to see that much power play time in Montreal. And right now it's just lighting him up. It's just lighting it up. Like it's so good for his confidence. Like let's not think like we have to fix anything right now. Like everything is going perfectly with Joshua Hua's development. You don't have to touch anything. And you know what? The American Hockey League is the best league for development because there's so many hurdles thrown. Like, I mean, you play these crazy stretches of like 5 games and 8 nights. I mean, your line mates are constantly changing because people get recalled all the time. So it really like and breaks you as a player. It makes you it forces you to find solutions. So I think it's such good development for him. Like so, don't change anything. But yeah, I mean, Joshua Roy as poise with the puck and hockey IQ that you just simply cannot teach. And it's funny because his skating is average. His shot is good. He has good ends, but really what separates him is that poise. He has that extra second, like where he knows where to go.
yeah, I totally agree. He's just improved his game in so many different
Yeah,
facets now. When you said what does he have to work on, I think you're right. It's just he's gonna keep on working on everything, right? He'll just get that
yeah,
little bit better and continue to build his stock. He's gone from, like, I thought I was kind of overhyping him coming into the season. I was like, this guy's gonna be a middle six player
yeah.
pretty soon, and I'm like, man, is he gonna be a top six player soon? Like, he's to
Maybe.
me, like, because he's so complete in so many areas, he doesn't necessarily need to come in and score 25 goals to be like a
Hmm.
second line player, right? If he comes in and say like next year he's ready to score 15-15, he's already one of the top 9 forwards on the team.
Exactly. He's like what Louis LeBlanc should have become. Like that very,
Great
very
comparison.
smart, poised forward, but LeBlanc never put in the work in the gym to be like a bit bulkier. Like Joshua was almost too bulky at some point because I talked to him. I think it was a couple of years ago when Roy came to Sherbrooke. He was like 20 pounds overweight. So Sherbrooke was like, "Oh no, yeah, like we're gonna give you this nutrition plan. You're gonna get some serious work done in the gym. You stop eating junk food right away." And it clearly it worked. He lost 20 pounds pretty quick, and he was telling me like before I came to the Phoenix. I mean, I was just gassed on the bench. Like I would be at the end of the shift and like I almost struggling to just get to the bench. And of course, his fitness dramatically changed, and you really see the rewards in his play right now. So, but there's a reason why he fell to the fifth round because that pace wasn't quite there in his game
Yep.
because he didn't have the fitness to match it up.
Yeah, and he's just made all the changes, and I love it when you see a player who could be a borderline guy, right?
Yeah.
And the thing that separates them from the pack isn't even necessarily skill. Though, like he clearly has skill. There's just lots of guys who have that skill. It's just he is so dedicated to improving
Yep.
himself, and to have that at a young age, to take that message as a teen, in junior,
Hmm.
and improve so much year over year, just really impresses me. I can't help but like really root for the guy. In Laval, obviously, there's a ton more defensive prospects. Who
Yep.
so far has stuck out to you?
Well, I would say in the opening game, I would have told you Logan Mayu. But I mean, it got murkier, I guess, in the other games. Uh, I mean, Logan is a risk taker on the ice, and he's not immune to some blunders. But he's a fun player to watch. Okay, so he's gonna be entertaining. He can make things happen offensively, but uh, he's not there yet. I think he's gonna play. He might play some games in Montreal, but it's not like Hua, the kind of player that's gonna be called up and he's not coming back. I mean, if he's called up, it's because someone is injured and he plays a few games.
Yeah.
The other and what's interesting to me is he's playing since the beginning of the year is he's playing a lot with Norlinder, which is interesting because they're two offensive defensemen, and sometimes like they can step on each other's skates a bit and miscommunicate, so that can be kind of tricky. But it's actually the Abs organization that wants this because they want the righties on the right and the lefties on the left, so that kinds of that's how it gets shaken up when you look at it. And as I think the player that could be called up at defense, it's hard to say because I mean, to be really honest with you, Andrew, the defensive prospects on Laval haven't done too well. Like even Trudeau, like some game, he was just pretty much unrecognizable. Like if you would ask me, like maybe the most stable guy, the most stable one, I would say Jaden Struble. So he's not going to be remarkable. Like you won't like get out of the rink and say, "Oh my God, I was amazed by Struble." But he's the most efficient for me. So for me so far, I would have said Trudeau, but Trudeau had really a brutal start to the season. But we're all familiar with his game and we know what he can do. So I guess it's just uh, temporary setback for him. But as far as Norlinda, uh, it's interesting. He came back to Laval, and you saw the good old Norlinder, which is what I wanted to see because last year Norlinder was a player with no identity when he would jump on a rush. So if you're an Norlinder and you don't jump on a rush, well, you don't have any purpose on a hockey team. That's sad, but that's the way it is. But I saw the same confidence. He's jumping on the rush all the time now. Maybe sometimes even to a fault. He's sometimes overconfident, but I wanted to see that, and I'd like to see that. Does he mess things up on defense sometimes? That he does he do the occasional like brutal turnover? Yes, he still
Yes.
does. Yes, he still loses his player in front of the net. You still see those things, but at least the confidence is there, and that's what I wanted to see. So, and Orlander, he's not playing as strong as he was playing during camp with Montreal, but you still see some good signs,
Right.
but
Yeah.
still work to be done.
The one thing I've noticed from Struble this year was I believe it was Waz hat trick goal on last
Yeah.
Friday. He was the one who stepped up at the blue line that created the turnover that created that
Yep.
goal. And I was like, man, to have the confidence to step up right there with two guys deep, that's interesting to me. I like seeing that from young players, even a guy like Struble, who's
Yep.
not known for being incredible offensively. And as you mentioned, him being the most stable guy, he also has NHL strength, which might earn him a,
Absolutely.
a couple of
There's some
minutes.
people that think Struble is going to be better than Jaka. I don't see.
I
I'm
wouldn't
not
go there.
agreeing with that. I wouldn't go there either. But some people with credible status, I guess, think that. So
That's
take it
interesting.
as it is. I mean, Jacky, he's not the perfect player at all defensively. It's actually his offensive game that impresses me. Like his wrist shot that is so hard that it creates a rebound that goes all the way to the top of the circle to Justin Barron. I mean, you know what? That's crazy. He even purses the net when he wants to. I mean, he's just a very fascinating player to me.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, anybody who is as strong as he is and can
Yeah,
skate and hold on to the puck, there's something there. Whether it's for this team or another team, there's going to be some defensemen traded at some point. They have so many
yeah,
defensemen who are either in the NHL now as young players or knocking
yeah.
on the door, right?
You
So,
think of even Engstrom that wasn't even at camp. He was in
and
Sweden this year.
everything I hear about Adam Angstrom is positive.
Oh yeah,
Like
oh
he's a
yeah.
very, and I saw him at rookie camp, and he was
Rookie
absolutely
camp.
incredible.
Yeah, he was the best player out there if I remember.
Yeah, him and Lane Hudson were the two big standouts from rookie
Yeah.
camp for me. Let's get some questions. I think that's a great time to do that.
Yep.
I think we'll
Sure.
talk about NHL Edge another time. I think
Oh
we've
yeah.
already gone long enough.
Let's give the guys what they want.
Yeah, exactly. There was a good question up here further. 22 Paper Dolls K was asking. She says, "I feel like Matheson didn't look great last night. Am I seeing things?" Here's what I've been seeing from Matheson, and Nick, you can disagree or agree.
Mm-hmm.
I think this year so far, we're seeing why Mike Matheson is not like a superstar defenseman. I think
Yeah.
he has crazy amounts of skill. He does things that most players wouldn't dare to do. But as we mentioned with Slafkovsky, there's like a level of precision that's just not in his
Yeah.
game. And that's why whenever I see people building like future rosters for the Canadians, they're like, oh yeah, they're gonna re-sign Matheson and he's gonna be playing into his mid-30s. I like the guy. I love that he's a hometown guy as well. I don't think he's gonna be around for when they're competitive. I think he's a,
So
a
yeah.
middle, like a stopgap number one guy.
So here's the thing: athletic abilities, elite.
Yep.
As far as the processor, the hockey brain that encompasses all of that, top four ish. So elite athletically, but top four ish as far as the processing the play, which is good.
Yes.
He's like top four in that regard, but that does not make him a true standout like number one demon. So he might be a two on an average team, a three on a very good team, or even an elite team. He can be a three or spend some time on the first pair, but he's not a true number one demon. But he's certainly a guy that can help you. And I mean, as far as like skating and athletic abilities, I mean, he's out there as one of the best, like, and the very, very, very best NHL players to me.
Yeah, and hey, holding the blue line, I don't know if there's
Oh
anybody better
gosh,
than him right now.
twice in the same power play. You saw that, right? And
Insane.
on plays, he had no business keeping the puck in. Honestly.
Yeah. And he does that like every game, once or twice every
Yep.
game. He'll make this incredible blue line hold. So like, there's a lot to like about Mike Matheson, but
Absolutely.
we can acknowledge he's not perfect. And I think that's part of the issue with these Canadians, right? Is they're playing really well, they're putting in crazy amount of effort, but there's still a fair amount of players who are playing like a spot or two above their heads, and
Absolutely.
sometimes that's going to catch up with them, and it'll look ugly. Sometimes they get away with it, and that's all right. There's a question here. Kay again says, "What are they doing with Primo? Should we expect him next game? What do you think? I think he's going to get a game in this stretch here,
Yeah,
but I don't know.
he's gonna play tomorrow.
Oh, is he?
To me, yeah, I think he's gonna play tomorrow. Maybe I'm mistaken, but I pretty much believe he's gonna play tomorrow. I mean, you have to play the guy at some point. It's
Yeah.
and from the reports we've gotten, I mean, Primo has been looking really sad and gloomy in the locker room these days.
Poor guy.
That poor freaking guy. I
Hey,
mean,
you're making
just give
NHL
him
money, guy. It's
something.
okay.
Yeah. I mean, he's gonna be fine, but at this point, the guy hopes he gets on waivers and gets picked. That's the harsh reality of it. Like, he doesn't
Yeah.
want to remain with the Canadians all year, like sitting on the bench or not even sitting on the bench. Like, he's gonna be like in. He's going to be out of the lineup like for all these games. I mean, no, that and even Hughes, he said like that's not something that can like persist like
Yeah.
all year long. Like we're gonna make a trade at some point, or somebody's gonna get injured, or something's gonna happen, but something has to give. And well, while you're going with three goalies, but you're gonna have to play three goalies. You have to live with your decision.
Yeah, and I think Primo, he's also from the previous management group. He was kind of sold a bill of goods that didn't pan out, right? Like he was basically told, "Hey,
Yeah,
come over here. You're going to spend 1 year
exactly.
in the AHL, and then you're going to be our backup. And then within a few
Hmm.
years, Price is going to retire. You're going to be the starter." He hasn't
But
earned
he
that,
didn't
but
earn it. He didn't
no, he
earn it.
didn't.
So at some point, he didn't really help the organization this way.
Yeah, yeah. It's like I get both sides of it, right? Like he definitely did not
Yeah.
earn it, but also I understand why a player like that would be bitter when you're
Sure.
told something's going to happen.
He has every right to be pissed, and he should be pissed because he's a competitor. Like if he wouldn't be mad right now, I mean, I'd be worried. Like
Yeah,
it's
100%.
fair that he's not in the right mindset right now.
Yeah, there's a bunch of questions here that are basically the same, asking where does Dvorak play when he comes back? I don't know about you, but since he's been out this year, I've like periodically forgotten that he's
I
still on
can't
Montreal
say
Canadiens.
I cannot say Andrew I truly care where Dvorak plays like there's no Avs player that made me as indifferent like as Christian Dvorak.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm
I
just
can't
stating the
really
truth
blame
here.
you. Yeah, he's not an
And he's not
inspiring
a
player.
bad player like by any means. Like he's just meh. I don't know.
Yeah, I
And
think
apparently he's very well liked in the locker room. Like the guys
yeah,
absolutely love him, and you don't see that during the interactions with the media. But apparently he's this big goofball, and he's like the funniest guy to be around.
yeah. I think realistically, it allows them to move Newhook back to the wing because at
Hmm.
center, that just
Yeah,
hasn't been working. I really like Newhook. I like Newhook with Slafkovsky, but they're both wingers, and it's just asking too much of Newhook to try to play center long term. So I think uh,
yeah,
they're
might
what they've
be.
got 5 more games till he can come back. He had to be out for 10 games to go on long term injured
Yeah,
reserve.
yeah, something like that.
So he'll be back soon. I assume it'll be just be to move Newhook to the wing. I would move Monahan up to the second line. I mean, honestly, I would probably play Jake Evans over Dvorak right now. I think Jake Evans brings a little bit more just based on the
Yeah.
last 2 years.
Well, Jake Evans always wow you at the beginning of the year, but once this like he kind of loses steam at some point during the season,
Yeah.
so we'll see.
I mean, he plays so hard, right?
Mm.
He's one of those
That's
guys that just
why.
always gives a crap. So
Exactly.
he's working with not nearly as much talent as a lot of other guys. Let's see here what else we got. Who's the next player from the Laval Rockets to be called up? I
Well,
think,
depends. Like if it's a
yeah.
forward or a demon.
I mean,
Next
hopefully we
player.
don't have to be talking about any more injuries for a while.
Yeah. Well, it sure can happen. But if we're talking about forwards, I would say it's either Mitchell Stevens or Lias Anderson.
Yeah,
Because
Lias
I
Anderson
don't
makes
think,
sense.
yeah, Lias Anderson, yeah. He gave me a great quote the other day in the locker room. He told me point blank, yeah, me and Gordon didn't have the best relationship in New York.
Well, hopefully they can repair that here.
No,
He's
but
had a
no,
really
they're good
strong
now.
start.
Like
Yeah.
they talked at camp and like they burned the bridges. Like they're all good. Like and even acknowledged like it was like a maturity issue, and he kind of took the blame there.
Yeah, AD mentions they just called up Armia, so yeah, that's definitely true. I mean, I would assume that if anybody starts to see their play dip, that Armia would get a shot in the lineup. But man, I've been so impressed with Michael Pezzetta. Guy
Yes,
plays a couple minutes a
absolutely.
night,
Yeah.
and he's a factor every night.
Yeah. I mean, he drew that penalty at some point in the third period, and he almost scored it. It was like just a magnificent effort, like around the net, like he almost tucked that puck in. That was beautiful to see.
Yeah, Trizak asks, which defenseman do you sit when Gooley is healthy? Barron has played well.
Yeah.
Is heroic as his shift was tonight. I know it's going to be difficult to convince any coaching staff to play 5 young
Mm.
players. I would
But
sit
you're
David
not.
Savard.
Yeah, but you're not. You would not convince any coaching staff.
No,
So
no.
probably Baron probably just goes
Yeah.
back in the press box. That's how it is. I mean, he scored a goal, but it's not like it was otherworldly. Like it was a good game, but it's not like the kind of statement or performance that tells a coach, yeah, yeah, you're not putting me back out there.
Yeah, he's just been solid. What I've been impressed with is they stuck Baron and Xhekaj together, and when they did that last year, it was really, really bad.
Yeah,
This year has not been so bad. Like they've been looking pretty decent. They're not playing top line matchups or anything,
yeah,
but the two of
yeah.
them have been all right.
Probably because of the overall structure that's better too as well.
Right, that's a good point.
Yeah,
And I feel like, as opposed to last year as well, I feel like everybody in the lineup is earning their spot in the lineup on a nightly
of course,
basis,
of
right?
course.
So when you have that complete buy-in, and no offense to UL Armia, I hate to always trash the guy because I feel like he's just the media whipping boy, but there
Yeah.
were a lot of times last year where he was not giving 100%, right? Where, or at least it
Oh my
didn't look like
gosh.
it, the kind of game he
Yeah.
plays. So there's none of that this year. So it's a lot of positivity here. Let's see here. What else have we got for questions? I think we kind of covered them all. AD says, is Nick Suzuki a number one center on a contending team? I want to
Oh.
believe, but 24 isn't that young, and I'm starting to worry he is what he is. I would say Nick Suzuki is not an elite center,
Yeah.
but if you have Kirby Doc and another guy of equal ability to Kirby Doc, and you build three scoring lines, you're probably going to be okay. You could
You're
kind of
fine.
do the same thing as like the St. Louis Blues did when they won the cup, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's something that you
So
can do, but
yeah.
if they can get like the thing that I've been saying is like my dream for the summer for the Canadians is find a way to pry Elias Pettersson out of Vancouver if he's
Yeah.
not happy and doesn't want to stay there. If you can get him, yes, Nick Suzuki can be second line center and
Oh
nobody's going to
yeah.
complain.
All the yeah. So he's not, to me, he's not like maybe a true number one center, but that doesn't matter as much as people would think. And I always go back to what Claude Julien, the comparison he would always use with Nick Suzuki was David Krejci.
Mm.
And Krejci was not necessarily like a number one center on an elite team, but he was really he was just fine with the Bruins, like in the role they gave him. And there was that year where he produced what, like 30 points. Like there was this crazy year he had in the playoffs. I remember. And Suzuki has
Oh
always
yeah.
been great in the playoffs as well. Suzuki has always been able to step up when it matters. So I guess if you have, like you said, if you have three good scoring lines, I mean, he's a player you can certainly win a Stanley Cup with, even though like on paper or by the numbers, he's not like that true bona fide like number one center.
Yeah, and I think the comparison I make with Suzuki all the time, like just the way he plays reminds me a lot of Saku Koivu. His
Yeah.
stance, like the wide legs, he's not as fast as
Yep.
Koivu, but I think he's like a little bit more creative.
Koivu
So
just didn't have like the curl and drag like component to this to his arsenal. But yeah, I see where you're going.
yeah, so I think when I say that, people get their back up. They're like, "Oh, we never won shit with Koivu," but that's because they didn't have anything else but Koivu
Eh,
for most
eh,
of Koivu's career.
Yeah,
So, sorry, excuse me. I think a lot of it depends on what they surround the rest of the team with. Ramelli
definitely.
is saying offer sheet Pedersen for 11 million. It's going to take more than that, a lot more than that to
Oh,
get
oh
the offer
yeah.
sheet to not be
The,
matched.
the the cap is going up, so the prices are gonna adjust accordingly.
Yeah, I would say if that is the weapon that the Canadians choose to use, get ready to forfeit 4 first round picks and like 14 million a season.
Yeah. Hey, yeah.
That's what I'm
That's
thinking it would take.
yeah. Would you do that though?
I
For
would.
first rounders?
I would
Yeah.
because it fast forwards the rebuild immediately to playoffs. I think next
Obviously,
year.
if you do that, you're aggressive. Okay, so
Yeah,
these four first rounders better be like end of the first, like lightning first rounders. You know?
yeah, like mid, at least mid, right?
Yeah, at
It
least.
can't be, you can't be tanking the next the next year, which I think would be impossible. But
Exactly.
if you could do if you could add a guy like Pedersen without losing Doc or Suzuki, you're that's money to me. I
Oh,
guess the question
absolutely.
is whether or not they finish in the lottery this year, right? So if they
Yeah.
don't, if they're like right outside the playoffs, I think you have to be aggressive like that because you need that elite player. up front.
Yeah,
They need it.
you do.
So
You do.
they got to find him somewhere. All right, we'll end it there. Thanks so much for everybody for watching. Thanks, Nick, for joining us. Before we close things out, Nick, tell everybody where they can find you.
You can find me on TVA Sports. I'm going to be covering the Rocket a lot this year, but I also have a strong focus on the Habs prospects. I'm going to do interviews. I'm still going to follow some of the top prospects ahead of the 2024 NHL draft.
Awesome. All right, folks. Thanks for
Yes.
watching yet another
Thank
episode
you,
of Game
guys.
Over Montreal. Thanks to Nick. And, man,
Thank you for having me.
good start of the season for the Montreal Canadiens. It's a lot more fun than the first year I did this. I'll say that. I think they started out with like 9 straight losses. So
Oh, yeah.
I'm having fun. The vibes are good. Thanks everyone in the chat for watching, and thanks for all of our replay and podcast listeners. Subscribe to SDPN, smash the like button on this video, and we'll see you on tomorrow because it's a back-to-back. See you then.
Game